Hi everyone, it's a beautiful day here in Northwest Alabama, here towards the end of March, and I'm going to start my spring treatment today. We're going to go through and assess these colonies, see if any of them's about to swarm. We're running kind of behind this year because of the strange weather we had, where it turned warm right after New Year's, and then we've had a sharp cold snap here in the last couple of weeks, and it's warmed back up now. That's been a struggle for the bees. I've heard of some starve outs here in the last few days in the area. So it's a time of the year that's totally different than last year at this time. You really got to be kind of on top of your colonies in terms of the weight. And I've looked in a couple of beekeepers in the area. I've looked at some of their hives, and there seem to be a decent amount of pollen coming in, but the issue seems to be a shortage of nectar. And so that's something that's got to be watched closely. But I have a guest with me today. His name is Johnny Graham. It's his first visit with me, and he's kind of going to watch and observe what I'm doing today. So we're fixing to get our smoker going and get started in these colonies. And these are going to be my 7 of my honey production colonies this year, and I'm going to have a total of 15. So we're going to get the Formic Pro on them today. I elected to wait this late. This is several weeks later than last year. The colonies wasn't quite strong enough, and I kind of had a suspicion this cold snap was coming, and I wanted to wait past that. So now that time is come and gone, and it's time to get the Formic on there and get these mites knocked down. Now, when I was 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I was putting these colonies in the new boxes, this colony here, I've seen a couple of mites in the drone larvae, so I know this one already has a pretty good mite load. So I need to get these mites under control, or that colony especially will be in trouble later in the year. So we're about to get started. Let's get to it. So I like to raise the lid up just a little bit, shoot a little smoke in there, let the bees know I'm coming in. And one thing that's important when you take this lid off is to scan it and look for your queen. Sometimes your queen can be up here, and if she is, you want to put her safely back in the hive.
There's an indicator to look for that'll tell you the queen's close. I mean, is there any kind of, or you just have to scan?
You kind of just have to scan, and that comes with experience. But you saw those bees in a circle there. That's called a retinue. A lot of times the bees are getting pheromones from her in what's called a queen retinue. But right there, the bees are just feeding each other. And this queen in this colony will be pretty dark, unlike the one we saw a while ago. Darker queens are a lot harder to spot. Now, these colonies up here, I've checked the weight carefully along, and they've stayed pretty heavy. And I've had some yards in the past that I have to feed, but I rarely have to feed this yard. Hit these just a little bit. They're pretty calm, not really excited. They're not roaring up or anything. That's a good indication we got a queen in there. I can see evidence of brood in this frame, so we'll just take a peek at it right quick and see what kind of brood pattern.
Now, what evidence did you see?
Okay, I'll show you when I get the frame out. Looking down from the top, I can see the cappings, the top of the cappings. We got drones flying around in here, or not flying, we got drones crawling around in here, and also
that one
flying.
right there, a drone?
Yes, that's right. We got a good amount of pollen in here and some honey in the upper corners, which is exactly what we're looking for. There's a queen cup. The colonies will keep queen cups in here throughout the spring and summer, on standby, ready to go in case of emergency.
Okay, so that's just an empty one, just in case they decide to need a queen.
That's correct. And just looking at this frame here, I don't see any evidence of backfilling, so that tells me that most likely this colony is not going to swarm in the next 2 weeks. There's plenty of room here for the queen to lay, and there's not nectar being shoved into every cell that's available. There is some nectar in here, but not a lot. So that tells me we've probably gotten to this colony in time. We can safely do this treatment and not have to worry about them swarming. But we are going to check underneath to be sure. Now, usually when you have multiple boxes, and I may be wrong, right there's a queen cell. Looks like it's yeah, they're actually making a queen there, so that's just one.
Is that a sign that the queen in here is in trouble?
That's a sign that they're probably actually starting the swarm process, so that tells you what I just said was wrong. See, here's some more. They're just in the beginning stages of this.
So we won't take them off, don't we?
I want to tear those off, and we've caught this in time that we can reverse this. Most of the time, I've had pretty good luck doing it. This treatment's going to shut that down, but also we're going to checkerboard in an empty super with this, and that should buy 2 or 3 weeks. Definitely, I'll be able to get the treatment in there. So we'll set this aside. I run 9 frames of my supers. I run 10 of these. But what we've done there by turning that up is the quickest, easiest way to identify if there's swarm cells being built. That's simply what I want to do with this one. Not nothing really down here, and that's basically what we expect to see in between the boxes, usually where they'll start building them. It is possible that they was going to just supersede that queen. I don't know for sure, but more than likely the colony was probably, if they was intending to swarm, they're probably at least a week away from actually issuing the swarm. So now that I've looked at that, the colony overall is in good shape, and we're going to apply the Formic Pro. And I'm going to do the one treatment that lasts 2 weeks. This is the stronger treatment. I'm going to put both strips on here, and then I'll make sure there's adequate ventilation. Now I have a permanently attached entrance reducer on here that equals 3 square inches opening. The instructions tell you that the entire front must be open. So to compensate for that, since I can't remove the entrance reducer, I will just simply slide the super back about 1/2 inch, and that calculates out to about 11 inches, which is the entirety of this being open with 3/4 of an inch. So if I slide this super back 1/2 inch plus the 3 inches down here, that will give me the 11 inches required for the ventilation. Also, this product must be used with a temperature range of between 50 and 85 degrees. If I remember correctly, I know 85 is the top range of the temperature. You want to have gloves to handle this. It is an acid. It's an organic acid. It has kind of a strong smell. You don't want to breathe it a lot. It's very important this paper on here will control the off-gassing. It's very important that you don't remove that paper, or it will cause the off-gassing to be very immediate. The temperatures need to be between 50 and 85 and not above 85 the first 3 days of the treatment. That's when the majority of the off-gassing will take place. So that's the configuration. I've got it right over the brood, and there's some brood in that medium. So that's exactly how I want it. Now I'm going to put the medium back on.
This one gonna go on top or in between?
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix the frames together to look like a checkerboard.
Okay.
And you'll see what I'm talking about. The object of the game here to keep them from swarming is to never let the queen run out of spaces to lay. And this will accomplish that, but you have to have a drawn out comb like this for it to work. Foundations will not work with this technique. So I've got my Formic Pro on. I've got this slid back 1/2 inch to make up for the permanently attached entrance reducer. The queen should be shut down 2 or 3 days, but to allow extra ventilation and for the cluster to expand like they're going to want to do with that fume in there, I'm going to go ahead and checkerboard this medium with this one I got sitting on the bench back here. All right, so I pulled out 4 frames on one side, it don't matter which. So now I'm gonna fill in with empty drawn out comb. That will ensure the queen has plenty of places to lay once she starts back in 2 or 3 days. And that's also gonna buy me a couple weeks on them trying to swarm. So I left a full out here on the wall, and I'm putting an empty one in here. And I'll slide a full one over. I'll put an empty in here. And you see why it's called checkerboarding?
Yes, sir.
Put a full one over next to that one and another empty. So now I've got that one checkerboarded, and I'll go ahead and set my second medium up here. And we'll start the opposite with it. We'll have a empty to the outside, and then I'll start putting my brood back in here. And there was another empty, then I'm going back in here with a full. Now, as warm as it's going to be for the next week or so, I'm not worried about the brood chilling or separating a little bit like that. They'll be just fine. So that's it. I've basically got the equivalent of 2 double deeps on here, and that's the maximum I want to go with Formic Pro. If I get any bigger, it's probably going to hurt the efficacy of the treatment. Then I'm going to cover this ventilation hole with this wrapper. So we knocked out a couple of swarm cells, and then put the treatment on. I slid this back about a ½ inch to make up the deficit in the ventilation down there, because I have a permanently attached entrance reducer. If it wasn't permanently attached, I would just simply remove it, but this will allow for proper ventilation. And then I checkerboarded in this super here with an empty drawn out comb, so the queen will have plenty of room, as it appears that they was making swarm cells to go ahead and swarm. This should buy me some time. So that's one hive. We'll do these other ones the similar process that we just done out here. So we got all 7 of these colonies done the way we just done that one I demonstrated. There was at least 3 of them here that was on the verge of swarming, especially this one. As you can see, a tremendous amount of bees there. I elected to go ahead and just tear those cells out, because this is a honey production yard, and I've got colonies I do want to make splits off of, but I need that workforce in there to make my honey crop this year. But overall, this yard looks really good. We did see mites, and at least 3 or 4 of them whenever we take the sleeper off on the drone brood, and that's just simply me getting behind last summer and fall catching up with me. So right now, I'm hoping this is going to be a reset, and I can be much more strict and intentional with my mite treatment strategy and get the mites back under control. Even one of the drone cells we saw 3 female mites in it. Evidently there's a lot of mites in these colonies. Food wise, they're doing great. They're getting a good amount of nectar. Overall, they're pretty healthy, and with this Formic Pro, they should get a lot healthier. All right, I've gotten all 23 colonies done. I wound up reversing that one. That's the weakest colony I have that's queen right, and the rest of them are doing pretty good. You can see some of those are bearding out there, along with those 2 from the off-gassing of the Formic Pro. We actually caught maybe 4 or 5 that was in the process of swarming. One of them, or I say in the process of swarming, I mean they had swarmed cells and they were within days of swarming. Now one of them was very, very crowded. I'm really surprised it hadn't swarmed. The only thing I can think that might have saved it was this recent cold spell we have. And I know I could have took it and made splits with it, but I went ahead and destroyed those swarm cells, because these other colonies are just not ready yet, and that's a honey production colony, and I need those bees in there. I checkerboarded a medium super on there, and I'm counting on that Formic Pro to do what it did last year and shut the queen down for 2 or 3 days. And that may not work out, but that's what I'm going to go with this time. Now, if you're in my area of northwest Alabama, I want to urge caution. In recent days, I know of some beekeepers that's had starve outs, and this spring is completely 180 degrees different than last spring. But this time last spring, I had several colonies with 2 supers full of honey, and I've personally seen some colonies in this area that are literally living hand to mouth, and it seems to be in terms of nectar. Most of them seem to have a good amount of pollen, but the carbohydrates just seem to be what they're lacking. Here in a moment, I'll show you evidence that there's a nectar dearth still going on, as I got a broken frame around here that it's literally covered with hundreds of bees. So right here's all the proof I need to know that there's still a nectar dearth out here in late March. So there's a plastic frame that had a lot of honey in it. One of the ear tabs broke off, so I had to take it out, but I've got it sitting here at home, and then this is basically 25 minutes after I set it here. And if we had a good nectar flow going on, this frame would just almost be ignored, but not this year. So this is evidence to me that we still have a nectar dearth, and we still got to be careful or our bees will starve out here in this area. I did see evidence of high mite loads. We did see quite a few mites in some colonies where we would separate the boxes, and I looked quickly down at the drone brood on top of the frames, and probably at least 5 or 6 colonies we saw that. So, and I was kind of expecting that with the way I got behind last summer and fall. I knew that I didn't do the proper mite treatment in a timely manner. Now I'm trying to reset and get this under control before it gets out of hand. If I was to skip this spring treatment, I would have a lot of colonies in trouble come this summer and fall, because I haven't seen mites on brood like that since 2020. This kind of weather is really rough on the bees. You have all this warm weather, they burn through their resources in a hurry that they have stored up, but there's nothing for them to get out there. And then just as soon as things gets going, you get this week and a half cold spell coming here. This is very hard on the bees, and that's where we as beekeepers, we have to take up the slack for Mother Nature in this instance, or Mother Nature will take our bees from us. It's pretty simple. The biggest issue I've had this spring is queenlessness. I did find one that was queenless. Well, that wraps this project up for the day. I want to thank you for taking the time for joining me for this little adventure, and we'll catch you on the next one.